Welcome to Ultramodern. This is a lifestyle and creative podcast created by Crosswalk Future of that examines the ways that God is moving and working in today's world. To learn more about Future of, follow us on Instagram at futureof.cw.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Ultramodern Podcast.
Ultramodern.
My name is Andy Palomares. I'm the youth director here at Crosswalk. I work with junior high, high school, and college.
Vibe.
And I thought we would just start that way, introducing ourselves to everybody who is listening. So my name is Andy. Who are you to my right?
My name is Isai. I'm
Isai,
as some people say.
Yeah.
A lot of people mess that up. It's
Acai.
Isai. I have no nicknames.
They're like my boy ISIS.
You have to learn
Okay.
it. People have called me that, to
Dude,
be honest.
be afraid.
Yeah, it's wild. My name is Isai, and I'm the worship pastor here at Crosswalk. Worship and creative I don't know what my title is, but something like that.
Yeah.
Man. What's up, guys? My name is Joshua Estrada, and I help out here at Crosswalk with the different areas, some design stuff, some foothill stuff, and worship.
Nice.
That's right.
It is a vibe.
Cool. So welcome to everybody that is listening right now for the first time on the podcast app on Spotify. That is a big step up. We were doing podcasts for a while on YouTube, which I don't know if they're technically called podcasts, if they're not
Vodcasts.
I
like
call
a
it
vodcast.
vlogcast, right? I feel like I've coined that.
Vlogcast.
Is that a thing
That's
already?
probably a thing, bro.
That's probably a thing.
Look
dude.
it up. Where's it? You know how Joe Rogan has
Hey,
the guy who just looks
Jamie,
up?
Jamie,
Jamie, can you
listen?
He
There's
says
nobody
it's a
there.
thing. He says it's a thing already.
No, Jamie's talking to me and he says
No,
not.
Jamie says it's already a thing. Anyways,
Oh, this was a bad idea, huh? Us three.
welcome to the Ultramodern Podcast. I'm so glad that you're listening on Spotify, whatever podcast you have. And to those of you looking at us on YouTube, look at us in all our glory. Hello.
This is us.
So let me begin first by just explaining what the Ultramodern Podcast is.
Yeah.
So this is the podcast that is actually under Future of. Future of is our college/young adult ministry here at Crosswalk. And we've been doing podcasts for the past couple of weeks, especially towards the end of quarantine. We started leaning into this. And we decided to actually step fully into it. We're going to try doing this. Hopefully, this will happen weekly.
Can we make t-shirts?
Yeah,
Sorry.
we can make
Keep
t-shirts.
going.
For sure we can make.
Good.
I actually have a couple of drafts on my computer that we can look at.
Show us.
Show
Not
us.
right now, not on
Okay.
camera.
Jamie, roll it up. Put it
Jamie,
on the back.
don't do it, Jamie. So let me get into like what ultramodern means, and then that will probably actually lead into what we're going to talk about.
Is it super modern? Is
It's
that what it is?
super duper modern. It's
Can we
like,
call it super
Double
modern?
well, you can't say super modern because, oh yeah. I thought you were going to say after modern because postmodern.
Jamie, can you zoom in on Isai's glasses? It's getting foggy.
Yo, this is my life. I'm gonna be honest, man. I can't see, but that's okay. I don't need to see
You
you guys.
told me that the other day your head was hurting and you're like making like some kind of face at all
Yeah,
moments.
you guys
to
want
keep-
to see my face? This is my face. I'm
Don't-
making all the time.
Oh my gosh.
I do that face because my cheeks lift up my mask in a way that allows this not to fog up.
Why don't you just get
A
contacts?
better mask.
just get
No
contacts, bro.
I'm scared, man. I don't put stuff in my eye like that, man.
Just straight
I don't know
up?
how people who put contacts on are psycho. I don't know how you just like touch your
That is a
eyeball.
little scary.
Like touch your eyeball, dude.
No, heck no.
Exactly. How do you do that?
That is,
Doesn't
I
make-
never
doesn't
thought
make
about
any
that.
sense.
Hey, I'm sorry about. Okay, go back to
Sorry.
Well, one more
definition.
thing
Define it.
to affirm the contacts thing. I had a friend in high school who got kicked in the face with, hit in the face with a soccer ball, and it hit his contact behind his eye, and it was stuck there. He had to go to the hospital, and they had to take it out. So don't wear
Don't wear contacts,
don't wear
guys.
contacts.
Don't do
Just wear
that.
But if you
glasses.
do, it's cool. It's all good.
It's also all good.
Ultra modern.
Just anyways, I have terrible eyesight. Anyways, okay, ultramodern. Here's what it is. The actual definition on the internet is this: incorporating ideas, styles, or techniques only recently developed or available. So, of course, we are taking stuff that's already been thought of. We're going to be talking
Sure.
about thoughts from the past, things that we have built upon, especially in our faith. But I think the essence of this podcast is trying to see what God is doing that is new. We're trying to go in new directions. And I think, especially in light of everything that's happened in 2020, what we have been doing can't be the only thing that we do. Like the systems that we've been a part of, the way that we do church, I mean, the way that we look at community has changed.
Right.
At one point, we were doing church every Saturday.
Right.
in person, filling up the room, and never once did we think about a moment where we wouldn't do that. And
Right.
through quarantine, it's been an interesting journey to figure out how to do community, how to do
Sure.
church differently, like apart
Yeah.
but together.
And I feel like it's definitely in a learning season, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
wouldn't say if it's figured out. I think everyone's trying to like,
No doubt.
how are we supposed to do this
Yeah.
thing? Right?
Yeah.
Especially
We've done a lot of things where we've just learned what not to do, man, during the season.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Can you name one? Like, what's a?
Yeah.
Do you
Jamie-
mean like
Jamie,
just
pull it up.
energy spent
No,
that didn't render?
I have an example, like maybe a big picture thing, but
Yeah.
just kind of everybody leaning into kind of this video production thing, which sounds kind of weird because I've been kind of leading it here at Crosswalk,
Sure.
you know, but that's been like kind of the direction that we've taken. Like, and a lot of organizations, a lot of people have to do that in order to keep going and lean
Yeah.
into media and stuff. But I'm noticing that people are just so overwhelmed. Like, you work with high school students, right? And and college students, right? Like, a lot of you guys spent all day on Zoom, and
Right.
then only for every other sense of community to also come from a screen. Like, that's been kind of tough. And so it's
'Cause, like,
we've tried
screen-
that, and we're seeing like, man, that might not make a lot of
Like
sense either.
screen time used to be people's breaks, right? So like in between
Right.
classes.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were working on stuff on your laptop, you're like focused in on what's happening in the room.
Yeah.
And then you'd use it in between to like, oh, I'm gonna catch up on YouTube, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna watch some stuff on a streaming service, right? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it's like, you know how iPhone sends you an average of like screen time?
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
10
yeah.
hours.
Yeah, all of a sudden everyone's just like shot up
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
by a
I,
ton.
I'm
right?
like ashamed to show you how much time I spend on Instagram. So I actually, have you guys seen that documentary about all that? The
Social dilemma.
Social Dilemma.
I watched it.
That changed. I mean, I thought it was a bit exaggerated. Like
Me
it was
too.
for sure a caricature. Like it that doesn't actually happen.
Yeah.
But the whole notifications thing, I was like, that's so true. But not like them trying to get you on the app, but that I have the desire. As soon as I see that pop up on my phone, I'm immediately like, I got to check it out.
Absolutely.
So exactly for those podcast listeners, Josh just did that. 'cause he's a funny
I'm
guy.
starting to see that, like, this oversaturation of maybe media and production and like everything being online.
Yeah.
Like, it seems kind of unhealthy, but also it's turning people off. And I remember like for so long, an older generation telling us, get off your phones, right? Get off your. Who would have thunk, right? That the way to get everybody like to not want to be on their phones or not want to be, on TV, is to
Whole
just
pandemic,
Put everything
oversaturate.
on it.
Everything is going to be here. Everything is going to be online. And I feel that people are kind of turning away. And I'm not just talking about like being on social media, right? But I even feel like a phone call is more effective in like connection and building community
And then like FaceTime,
than no FaceTime is well, actually maybe, I don't know, man.
it's
But
like a break, kind of like, oh, finally.
yeah,
like-
it's something different. Like, we have to rethink it that way because it's not fully possible for us to meet. But it's been definitely a new season.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you even told me one time was that, like, obviously working in a church, we look at what other churches doing, and it's super awesome. But at the same time, sometimes, like, as someone producing the content,
Yeah.
I don't always look at the thing that I make at the end, and I can imagine how someone is just overwhelmed by all of these worship services, all these
Yeah.
whatever, and it's almost like they don't want to do it anymore, And
Sure.
I think part of that, especially with this, what we want to lean into with Ultramodern is like, what does that new look like then in this space
Right.
of like everything right now is online, which is an amazing way to get connected
Including
to each other.
this.
Yeah,
right? Like,
this is
Yeah, it's
online.
gonna be online.
But what do we do to not be overwhelmed by that? Or like, what new directions do we need to go? Maybe it is more leaning into social
got it.
media and internet. What is it?
Pop-up books.
Pop-up
Bring them
books.
back.
Bring 'em
We're
back.
bringing them back.
Oh, literally like the
You're onto
like
something.
the kids' books.
Yeah.
I love those.
Dude,
Those are the
that'd be
only
great.
books I read.
Do a sermon
Only
in
books I
pop-up
read
book
still.
form.
That'd be amazing.
Dude, the guides in pop-up. Anyways, carry on.
Anyways, so this whole podcast will revolve around this idea of going in new directions, leaning into whatever God may be doing differently now. And I think one of the things that we really, really want to make a point is that in this podcast today and then in the future, whenever we do it, we are not saying this is the truth or this is the what you need to think.
This is the way.
Exactly. More than anything, what we're doing is trying to provide the tools for people on how to think critically. Because I think more and more as I've progressed, I've realized what I've learned in the past, while it's necessary, sometimes it doesn't carry me into the future. And what we want to do is try to figure out what those things are and just equip ourselves to figure out what it is that we need to go forward and what it is that we don't need.
Can you share the definition again?
Yeah.
Of Ultramodern?
It's incorporating ideas, styles, or techniques only recently developed or available.
But so I think the key to it is, or it implies awareness of the new, right? Or being able to track a new opportunity. But I think that the key word on there is incorporating the new thing, right? Or doing something with that new information.
Right.
And I feel like there's a lot of room for trial and error, right? Of us figuring out like, oh, maybe we can try this throughout the next couple of services.
Yeah.
And then talk about it here, right? Like, hey, like we tried doing this thing, like did not work.
Straight up did not work. That's a really good view into the process. I think sometimes, especially because in church or on social media, things can look very structured and like people have it together. But I feel like on this podcast, we just got to be really real in that we are trying to incorporate the new. And you're going to see the process of it. And sometimes it'll work. Sometimes it's not going to work.
Yeah. I literally just this past week, had a conversation with the Chattanooga crew and telling them about shout out Chattanooga, talking about like the new style of shooting our services, because we're trying to shoot everything live,
like handheld,
everything live, like not do like post edit, because that's what we want to stream eventually, right? And I told them, hey man, guys, it might get worse before it gets better. You know what I mean? And what I've appreciated by a lot of people, and I think what we need more of, is just grace towards people who are trying to rethink things. Because we're gonna mess up a lot.
Or we're gonna try new things and realize like that just wasn't it.
Right. Yeah, I realized this is a technical question maybe for Isai. So when we were doing Crosswalk 17, we did some of the handhelds, right? And I felt like some of them shot in real time, and then some of them were like super like pixelated. What causes that? Or like, what did you guys figure out? Like, why was that happening? Was it just a certain camera? Or was it like Wi-Fi?
So what happens is we have these 4 kind of receivers. They're called the Tear Deck bolts.
Don't even repeat it.
I won't. But what they do is essentially send signal from the camera to our board in the back, where our video director,
but at like really high quality, right?
Really high quality. So Nico back there is like switching live from camera to camera. And anyways, turns out we bought one too many, right? So we had 4. Only 3 really work well together, or else they start interfering and take up the whole spectrum of connection
bandwidth or whatever.
And so we're gonna have to just
do it with 3.
We're gonna do it with 3 and then wire one in. So we're learning, guys. We're trying to figure it out,
we all totally understand. All our listeners for sure know what we're talking about.
They care about that.
Pterodactyls and pterodactyls.
But I'm saying, I was trying to put pterodactyl.
Say that without.
That's it.
I was trying to throw in like that would be the ultra modern approach in practice, right? It's like you adjust to the new thing by figuring out how to do these like handheld cameras. And then you find out this information of like one of these pieces isn't working. And so you go into problem solving. Like we still want a 4th camera shot. And so how do you do it, right? And then it's like hardwire.
Wire in.
Which creates limitations for that camera person.
That's right. All those things.
You have to pick like, there's one thing that this person can do because they have a. Anyways.
That's great. No, and I feel like we could build upon that idea, because when quarantine started, I didn't know what to do. We started filming stuff and started putting it on our YouTube page for the high school, and I would come in here Friday nights to record my sermon. I remember one night. I had set it up all by myself and whatnot, and I showed it to Isai, and he was like, "Hey man, Isai, you're so kind, bro. You're so kind." You're like, "Dude, wow." let me help you. Like, or you're just like,
Hey man, you're really screwing this up.
let me show you exactly.
let me help you.
That's
here.
what you really meant, and it was just a lot of trial and error finally to get it to a place where it looked good
Yeah.
and where it actually. And I feel like we could, like, let's just take it a step further. What does that look like for our life right now? Like,
Yeah, well, before we go there, I want to complain about Isai one time.
do it.
Go ahead, man.
One
Do it a lot of times.
Let it out. Dude.
One time,
This is the space. This is it. We're gonna
in front of everyone.
air out our
No,
relationship
but
issues.
this is stuff to like it's the trial and error of stuff. Remember that sermon I recorded, and I was like, "Hey, it's recording, right?" You're like, "Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure." I did this
And it
whole
wasn't
sermon,
recorded.
and it wasn't recorded.
That's right. And I left. I was like, hey man, good luck.
Yeah, and I had to redo it again.
The
But it
entire
was
thing.
what was tough is like the headspace of I have to redo it,
It's the whole thing.
right?
You have to get back into that headspace.
Yeah.
I have another story to continue this thought.
Oh my
Is
God.
it about
Awesome.
Isai or about?
It is, but the thing
I'm
is,
ready for it, bro.
I love
Oh,
you,
because I got
bro.
another one after.
You like you. First of all, for those of you who don't know, I interned under Isai
Yes.
in the summer of 2018. It was supposed to just be for the summer. He asked me to stay on, and it actually blossomed into an awesome friendship. So we're saying all
Oh,
this
dude.
with love. I love you, bro.
I love
I
you,
am
bro.
who I am because of you.
Oh my!
Come on.
Sorry.
We're gonna have to restart the whole podcast.
Sorry.
Let's start it
All
again.
over.
Do the intro. Go.
Hey guys, so what happened this one time actually? Oh yeah, I had to film a sermon on Friday night, and it was my fault because I totally waited last minute to do it.
Uh-huh.
Like it was coming out Saturday, and I still had to film it, put the whole service together, all that, and you came to Crosswalk to help me
To
to
set
set
you
up
up,
the camera
and
so
I
that it
left.
would look nice and whatnot. It's
Right.
probably like 4 or something, and I record my sermon because you set it up for me and whatnot. I go do Vespers. After Vespers, I'm like heading home with the camera to edit this thing. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to knock it out. It's probably like 10 p.m. at this time. I get on the computer and I just could not find the film file. Like, because of what I know what it looks like. I couldn't find it on the file. Turns out we recorded in a different format. And what I actually had to do was download a different software
Terrible.
to figure out how to transfer it into a actually manageable and editable format. And I'm not kidding you. It was me and Nico. Shout out Nico. You are amazing.
Nico's the
I love you.
greatest.
I love you,
The
Nico.
best guy.
We were up literally all night, dude,
my
on and
gosh.
off till like 5 or 6 in the morning trying to get this thing figured out. And that's not your fault. I'm just saying that
Sounds like it's your fault, bro.
it was my fault.
I'm just
It
kidding,
was my
bro.
fault. But
No, I feel you. What a lot of people don't know is that I didn't know anything about cameras or video editing before quarantine. Like
That's
before
crazy.
everything.
You're like Iron Man when he
That's-
doesn't know anything about time travel.
was not my
like,
thing.
like, when did you figure this out? Like
just learned
last night?
No, I didn't know anything, and this season really has forced all of us to think outside of kind of our realm of expertise. Like it just forces you to do that. And another example is like questions about public health.
Sure.
Like that has been a huge part of my job, right? Which is not something that we
I
Ever
never
had
thought
to
I'd
think
have
about
right,
it.
like you never
Like,
think
oh,
you have
no.
to think about that, but when you're leading communities of this size, like when we decided the Redlands campus to meet again, like I would say 80% of our conversation was not about like worship or the service. It was about public health, right?
Yeah.
Which was so important for us. And I'm so grateful for the team who spent so much time like creating safety protocol and policies and stuff. But you think going into jobs like these, like
Yeah.
I'm never gonna have to worry about that or think about
Right.
this or whatever. But in moments of maybe like crisis or whatever, you have to have this kind of level of this idea that you have to adapt.
yeah. For
You know what I
sure.
mean? You have to adapt. When everything hit, like you guys remember the first week where everything like shut down and everybody's like going to the stores or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember
Went to like CVS. Oh no, we went to Stater Brothers, and
it was
there's a
just
big
like-
sign that says like you can only get one loaf of bread.
Yeah,
one
that's
bread loaf.
that's
Like,
craziness.
what?
That's crazy.
It's like,
Yeah. I
what if
don't
I
know if
wanted
you
two?
guys-
What if I wanted two of them?
I don't know if you guys remember like the first like shopping that you guys did in that week.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Hazel and I, my wife Hazel, when we went out shopping, we came back, we had a bunch of random stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
just a bunch of random stuff that we never would have to buy. We're just thinking like, what's gonna last us just in case like there's no food, right?
Beans.
So yeah,
Tons of
just like a
Doritos.
bunch of canned stuff that we never eat. And I remember Walmart, we had to just stay in line for like one little roll of paper,
Oh
you know?
my
And
goodness.
that night, we had a conversation because everybody was freaking out, right?
Mm.
Everybody was losing it. And Hazel and I had a conversation of like the people who are going to get through kind of whatever comes are people who are able to adapt.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're able to like adjust to what's happening. If you have a mentality that like, oh my gosh, my diet consists of, 2% milk and eggs, and we don't have that, everything is going to go down the drain. Like I
Yeah,
can't even
right.
function. If you have that mentality going into moments of chaos, like you're going to be stuck
Mhm.
a lot. But if you have a mentality of like, okay, I need to be willing to adjust. I'm a human being who's able to live outside of what my daily routine is
Right.
and change, whether it comes to your job or the food that you buy or your daily routine
Mhm.
or whatever. You just have to have this ability to
Pivot, right?
yeah,
Pivot.
Yeah.
pivot.
It's West Friends.
Pivot. Jamie, pull up the clip.
Pull up the clip.
No, yeah, that's so true. I mean, for me, actually, the transition into quarantine wasn't so hard because introvert to my core. Like be home. You're telling me I have to be home? Like, that's my okay. I gotta do that for sure. But I also know people where that was just like adapting to that was so difficult.
So hard, yeah.
Because you go from this mindset
Freedom,
of like,
right, of do
yeah,
your thing.
like I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. I'm gonna get coffee and then go to the bookstore and whatever it is. You have your routines, the things you have
Right.
to do, and then we went from that all of a sudden to like, you have to stay home. And
Right.
if you're gonna go out, you have to wear a mask. Oh, if you want food, you have to wait in line. Like it's the biggest adjustment, and
Yeah.
I'm realizing that was actually one of like a lot of people didn't adjust well. Like it
Mhm.
was just so odd to have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And especially considering the year that we're in. I mean, at this point right now, a president has not yet been decided.
Right.
We don't know who our
Could be,
president is.
it could be happening right now.
Yeah.
It could be.
Things
yeah.
are just changing all
We
the
just wouldn't
time.
know.
We won't, but hopefully by the time you hear this, you will know. But we don't know, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's another thing that
Right.
we've been experiencing. Like, how do you adjust to political things going on? How do you adjust to things like protests and stuff like that while being quarantined in your house?
Right.
And I think you actually had something that you wanted to talk about, considering all that.
I think, I have a couple of thoughts.
Can I share something before you go into
Sure,
it?
go ahead.
I just want to give like a what will make this unique to people who are listening from Crosswalk is that we are one church in
Yeah.
very different locations and settings, right? And so part of our experience comes from being in Redlands, being in the Inland Empire, being in Southern California, being close to LA, and just kind of like how stuff happens or how stuff is
Mhm.
localized in
Right.
California, right? And then we recognize that it might look different in our Portland location, right? Or
Yeah.
it might look different for Chattanooga and how they're experiencing all of this. But there's still like there's an experience in the global pandemic and in the elections and in all these conversations on politics that connects us as a church, right? And so
Right.
it's important to lean in and to think about it. Or what I would say is we have an opportunity to think about all these things as actually being a global church,
Right.
right? So that
That's special.
I don't have to think about this as just being part of Crosswalk Redlands, right? But I can
Mhm.
think about this as being part of our Foothills location, or how does
Yeah.
this affect Portland? How does this affect Chattanooga, Clinton, right? And our different locations, I think, is an
Mhm.
important insight for all of us who are part of
Yeah.
Crosswalk.
I think, and to add on to that, like we have to acknowledge the diversity in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as it stands now, or actually however this election ends, what is undeniable is that it was close,
Mm-hmm.
right?
For sure.
Like, it was really close. Like, it felt like it could have gone either way, which tells you how truly divided, like, our
Yeah.
nation is, right? And
I was gonna say that because even if the numbers wouldn't show a complete like 50-50,
Mhm.
our
It's pretty close.
experience, our experience with people is showing that everyone can be passionate about their own ideas,
Mhm.
right? And so even if it's not just like a 50-50 vote, it's like,
Yeah.
well, the main thing is people are passionate about what they believe in,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're going to go interact with one person about a subject, like you're going to bring your deep rooted belief
Yeah.
into that conversation, and so is the other person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think just seeing that and acknowledging, how kind of split we are, forces us to think about the type of interactions and conversations that we have with
Sure.
people a lot differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't just dismiss somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't just like okay, you think differently. Like, we're talking about like 50, essentially 50-50.
Yeah.
Like a 50-50 split. So for me, as I was looking at that, it forced me to think like, I need to be able to really truly empathize and have good conversations and be loving and gracious
Yeah.
to somebody who's at the complete opposite space, where before maybe you thought, oh, I can like kind of find my niche of people, like I don't have to interact.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I know what I believe or whatever, and I've seen that, and I'm just gonna stick to my people. But the reality is, like, we're going to interact with people who think so drastically different than us, and it's gonna force us. It's forcing us right now to empathize in a different way.
I think that not only will we have to interact with people, but what I've seen, like on Twitter, and mind you, I'm off Twitter now because Twitter has become like a war zone.
Kind of wild.
Yeah, like there's no rules on Twitter, and it was not good for my mental health. But it's not only that you will inevitably interact with somebody with opposing views. I've seen a lot of people seek out the people with opposing views, not for the sake of conversation, but for the sake of telling them why they're wrong.
Sure.
And I mean, it's interesting to think about, especially in light of what you're saying, that general respect that you should have when you have a conversation with somebody, because it will inevitably happen when you have opposing views. I think what we want to do here today is kind of talk about how you have those conversations and not who is necessarily right. Because what you're saying is so true. It would actually be dishonoring to a person to is the word concede and not give your opinion in a conversation, for growth and for the sake of our country, for the sake of goodness. I think that giving your point of view is actually necessary. But how do you do that? Because I mean, we talked about it before.
It is a form of respect, right? So to listen to your idea and then to assume this person, in the same way that they can share their idea, they're capable of listening to my idea, right? And so I should share what I think. So it's having a discussion or sharing your unique perspective to something is actually a way of assuming respect towards a person, right? Or that they have the ability to listen to what you're gonna say.
That's like that. Sorry, I'm gonna bring Naruto into this.
Oh, dude.
We
Hey, you
couldn't
don't
do
watch
this without-
Naruto.
I'm out.
Hey, come on, bro. Naruto changed my life.
It's an anime about ninja. It's amazing.
It is.
Continue.
Jesus spoke to me through Naruto.
I'm ready.
Essentially, you told me this one time. People have already seen it. I haven't actually finished it, but it's been so long that I'm gonna maybe really, give out some spoilers. Anyways, there comes a point in the show where the
Are
Great
you following
War.
Isai? I
No.
see you zoning out, bro.
I
You
Don't
gotta
literally
listen.
just zoned
You're
out.
looking at up there.
gotta
Don't
listen.
do that.
I'm just gonna make sure the camera's recording.
No, look at me. Look at me.
Okay, I'm ready, bro.
Anyways, there's a portion of the story where Naruto is faced with the decision: does he continue the violence, the cycle of war that has been going on for so long,
Yeah.
or does he choose to break that cycle? And really,
And he's like he's the guy with like the most amount of power right now,
Got it.
right?
There's this scene. There's this thing called Hokage, Raikage, like all these
Oh
things.
my gosh.
Anyways.
Leader of the village.
They're leaders, okay? And this certain leader is looking for Naruto's friend to kill him and whatnot. It's crazy stuff. And essentially, Naruto is willing to put himself between them. And at a point, he's just getting pummeled, right? Like just wrecked. But he refuses to fight back because he realizes that at some point, if we want to see real change, somebody has to be the first one to do it. And you could either continue the cycle of violence or you could choose to break it. I think I mentioned 2 stories there from the story arc, but the same idea is true. And the thing is, when you encounter somebody with maybe different opinions than you or from a different train of thought, what you're saying is so true, because if you come at them with, well, I'm about to just prove them why they're wrong, and you actually interrupt and you actually act out in anger rather than maybe, I don't know what the good thing would be, like goodness, then you're actually just perpetuating this cycle of anger, of violence. And I think something especially that fits into our model here at Crosswalk is to love well means that you're probably going to listen. And you're going to choose to hear a person out. It doesn't mean you agree with them. But it means that you're going to allow them the space to talk. And it doesn't mean that you have to, at the end, be like, we're on the same page. Right. Because nobody's ever on the same page. I'm not on the same page with myself.
That's good.
I feel that, dude. I think a win out of these conversations is to start and end with a deep recognition that the other is truly made in the image of God. If you can come out of those conversations still acknowledging the divine in the other person, I feel like that's a really, really big win. And every single person out there is somebody who God is trying to reach out to, and God is trying to is moving in their lives. You gave an example of Naruto. I'll give you an example from the Bible.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. But I will actually. So Jesus heals the centurion's daughter. You guys remember that story? Like a centurion, like a Roman soldier, comes to Jesus and wants his daughter sick and asks for healing. And Jesus heals them and says, I haven't seen this much faith. Somebody's calling me.
Are you getting a phone call right now?
Oh, my goodness.
I haven't seen this much faith in Israel, right? Which was like such a big diss for people.
Wait, say that one more time, because I feel like the thought kind of got broken.
Yeah. So Jesus, and the centurion asked for his daughter to be healed, and Jesus heals her. I'm summarizing here, and says something like, I haven't seen this much faith even in Israel, which is the greatest diss to the people of Israel, like a lot of people who are following him or whatever.
They're like, what?
And it's like
because the centurion would have been the oppressor.
He was the oppressor,
right? Yeah.
And in that story, like Jesus, it says that like, okay, people vouch for him, like this particular centurion was a good guy. Yeah. But still, at the end of the day, he represented everything that was oppressing the Jews, Israel, like, and that's tough. And I try to put myself in the shoes of the Jews who are listening to this. I'm like, Jesus, what the heck? And for me, it would be whoever the opposite side is for you, like the complete like other side. Imagine them going to Jesus, and Jesus provides healing and comfort to them.
Sheesh, bro.
That's how difficult. And the Roman Empire was truly oppressive, like truly, truly violent.
Wow.
To these people,
dude.
And Jesus heals them. How do you, and more of a story about the centurion? That's a story about the Jews and how they process through that. You know, and that, to be clear, does not mean like you're not angered at the oppression. That doesn't mean that you don't call that out, that you don't stop fighting against oppression. Like, to be clear, that does not mean that. I think you can have grace, almost see the divine presence in others,
Yeah.
while still at the same time being critical of the systems that they
Sure.
represent.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's what I think is interesting, and there might be room for further discussion on this,
Mm-hmm.
but Jesus gives a very unique way of dealing with Roman centurions, right? Like he specifies a couple of actions with them. One of them is that the Roman army had the policy to I need you to carry this for me
Right.
for a mile,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was a no questions asked. You just had to do it. It was part of your civic duty, right? And so Jesus says one way to undo the power of that is when that mile is done, tell them that you'll do another mile,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then in that vein of stories, he says things like, if somebody asks for your cloak, give them the rest of your stuff, right? Or if
Mhm.
somebody enacts physical violence,
Mm-hmm.
to give them the other cheek, right? And
Yeah.
so these are very difficult images to kind of sort through.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, isn't that what Jesus did
Right.
throughout his whole
Yeah.
lifetime,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that the actual thing that he demonstrated
Right.
for us, right? And so it seems like whenever there is adversity, Jesus chooses this path, right? Jesus chooses this way of being. And I'm feeling part of the conversation that's been happening assumes some level of clashing of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We've even talked about the possibility of civil war,
Right.
or of
Right.
people just getting in these crazy arguments. And what I'm thinking about is look at how we're already painting the picture of this thing, and
Yeah.
of how the election is going to play out.
Well, people told us, go to Costco.
Yeah.
Fill up your car with gas. And maybe 5 days ago, when people started having that language,
Yeah.
both of us talked amongst ourselves are we missing something here?
Yeah.
Should we be freaking
What-
out?
what's happening?
And just that conversation made me freak out. I
Yeah.
got a bunch of beans.
Sure.
My dad going to Costco, he got toilet paper.
Yeah.
That's so.
And
still
that's
blows
just
my mind.
based on the conversations that we're having.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I wonder if the challenge of the way of Jesus makes us be wise,
Sure.
right? But then asks us to do something different, something that's
Mm-hmm.
this opposite or third
Yeah.
option,
third way.
right? Because right now we're looking at the narrative is people are going to argue, people are going to fight, and the narrative is there's this side and there's this side,
Mm-hmm.
and in the situations that Jesus finds himself, it always looks like there's a side A and a side B,
Right.
and then Jesus does purple.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
he does triangle,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
just this totally different thing, but that actually ends up affecting the view that side A has on side B,
Right.
Right.
right? And so I'm wondering if the ask of the church right now is not to further identify with one's personal views,
Mm.
but if there's an ask of this thing that the church should do that kind of steps outside of that
Yeah.
Right.
and makes people see themselves differently,
Yeah.
right? And I'll give an example. There's an example of the people during Jesus' time see themselves as you're either clean or unclean, right? And then he does these actions that makes you force yourself outside of that situation and redefine
Absolutely.
what that means, right? And I feel like that's the ask of the church right now is okay, but if you had to step outside of this situation and redefine humanity
Yeah.
and like what we're about, would that change how you view somebody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you, man. I think you're absolutely right. If I can have a moment of honesty,
Sure.
like I've been looking at what that third way is, and it's tough. Like it's tough to find.
Because that's to subvert the current things that are happening, right?
Yeah, it's tough to even imagine, but also when I get hints of it, like things like the how radical Jesus was truly calling us to love each other and love one another, even when we're being oppressed. Like my first reaction is like, nah, I don't vibe with that. You know what I mean? Because
I'm good.
because during this season, there's been things that I've been so personally frustrated and angered about,
Sure.
and have felt like, okay, Jesus, it feels like Jesus is siding with the oppressed here, and I really align my heart to that, you know. And at the same time, like I see Jesus doing such drastic things, even to the point of like being on the cross and showing grace to people who are literally killing him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we can definitely talk about this third way. It's a lot easier said than done.
For
like,
sure.
Yeah.
and it's something I'm personally, if I'm being honest, like I'm personally walking through as we speak of what does grace look like in this area, where I feel so passionate about this certain idea that as believers you might feel like your particular idea models the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you might actually think that, which I think that, and I know a lot of people on another side think the same way, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm doing this because of maybe religious reasons or whatever. My belief in God is calling me to do this. And then the third way comes of, you know, Jesus being on the cross, like the ultimate sign of hate and disrespect, whatever, and still showing grace.
Yeah.
That's tough.
From
Yeah.
there, right?
It's tough if we really acknowledge how radical that is. It's tough, man.
Yeah. This is such a great conversation, y'all. Like I'm feeling inspired, and I'm going to try putting it into words, because I think the key, well, for me, what the key is right now to understanding what you're saying. Well, let me tell you my dilemma when I hear something like this, right? Because you read a story like the centurion's daughter, like the healing, and Jesus heals heals the daughter. There's no faith like this in Israel, right? My immediate instinct is like to put myself in the space of Jesus and say, okay, I need to do this. Or I see Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, just prayed prayer, sweat blood. He leaves, he gets arrested. Peter takes out a knife, cuts off the guy's ear. Jesus picks it up, puts it on. I put myself in the perspective of Jesus. And what that's done in my life is it actually stresses me out, because then I'm in the space of like I meet somebody I disagree with, or I see something I disagree with, and immediately I'm like, all right, I got to do what Jesus would do, and I got to act the way that Jesus would act, and I'm like trying to figure out the third wave, when in reality what I'm getting from like this conversation is almost the place that we need to be is the witness to Jesus doing that act. So what I mean is Jesus doing that in front of me, like Jesus healing someone in front of me, or in front of Peter, probably was more powerful than Peter like sitting in that moment thinking, actually, I'm not going to do that. You know, like, and what I mean is this. One time I was at Kimchi Changa. Have you guys had Kimchi Changa?
That's a good
Yeah,
joint.
it's great.
That's a good place. Shout
Can
out
you
Kimchi
can you
Changa.
say a little bit about what it is as a restaurant?
Oh yeah, it's a Korean Mexican fusion.
It's a good
Yeah.
place.
It's an amazing restaurant. Get the California burrito, delicious.
Yes.
There's one time I almost get in a fight there. Crazy story. I'm not gonna say all of it. It was
Did you say he was gonna fight?
I almost got in a fight, dude. This guy wanted to fight
I've
me.
heard the story.
Yeah, but I was with Abe and Michael, and like this guy wasn't gonna. I mean, I was like, bro, nobody's trying to fight.
You weren't picking a fight.
I was
Just to be
gotcha.
clear, like he wasn't just like,
I was
hey,
like,
yo,
no,
I was
no.
like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Definitely I wasn't picking a fight. I was trying to fight me.
Okay, yeah.
Specifically. And then, anyways, we didn't fight, but the story ends. Like I said, I'm not gonna tell the whole story. The story ends with me walking these two kids back to the motel that they're staying at. They're from another state. These two kids, they're in town because their mom is getting a surgery, and they're staying there at this motel. And they were at this restaurant, and they didn't have enough money to pay for food, so we ended up paying and getting their family food. They had like three or four brothers, sisters at the motel. And I'm walking them back to the motel. It was me and Abraham. Me and Abe were walking down there. And this is like downtown Riverside. It's a little sketchy. Like you see a lot of crazy things going on there every now and then. And like we're walking this area, and we're about to pass a bunch of people that are displaced, and it seems like they're openly like using drugs and whatnot. And I'm here with two kids. It's me and Abe, and immediately I feel me and Abe like had this unspoken thing of like we're going into protective mode. Like my goal right now is to protect these kids from whatever may happen. And we're walking, and this lady or the kid that was there, like he sees these people sitting there. There's this lady, and he reaches in his bag and he pulls out $2, which is like he couldn't afford the food, so we bought it for him. So this is like all the money he had, and he gives it to this lady, and she says thank you, and when we walked away, my first instinct was like, what I wanted to communicate to them was like, hey, you gotta watch out with strangers. You just don't talk to strangers, especially in an area like this.
Yeah.
But what I said was like, oh, do you know that lady? Because they said thank you and whatnot. And he goes, yeah. The other night, me and my family needed money, and she gave us money, and it was the biggest like shift for me, because here I am judging and assuming and these things. But being a witness to that situation is actually what changed me. Yeah. And I realized like I probably would not have experienced that shift had I not witnessed what I did through this kid. And I think right now, like maybe one of the keys in this conversation is not to say who's right or who's wrong, because we all have differing opinions, but actually to think about that person you disagree with. What would it look like for Jesus to show grace to that person? To Jesus say, there's no faith like this in blank. I mean, that's the biggest shift for me. And and it's difficult because there are things that I don't agree with. There are perspectives that I think are wrong. But at the same time, how does Jesus call us to love well in an experience like that, or in a situation like that?
And my life is often motivated by I want to be affirmed by Jesus, right? Or I want to receive an affirmation by Jesus. Mm-hmm. But in this story, it's about how do you do when Jesus affirms other people that you have disagreements with, right? Or you have biases towards. Like, how do you respond to the blessing that Jesus gives to people he calls his children to, right? Are you able to see, well, the reason why that person is being blessed is because they too are a child of God? Right. Or do you go straight into that blessing that they're getting was supposed to be mine? Right? Is that
prodigal son kind of
older brother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What makes, I think, these conversations so important but also so difficult is that each side views the other side as being a threat to their existence. Right? And every opposing argument is, some people would say, is an existential crisis, like a crisis of existence for them, which is why it feels like the stakes are so high. And I want to acknowledge that, and it's important for us to continue to stay engaged. And this doesn't mean that we're just like these naive people not calling out what God is calling us to call out, right? But I think about Jesus in the literal worst crisis of existence of dying is able to show so much love and so much grace and ask God for forgiveness for these and advocates
Right.
for the people. He advocates for the people who are killing him.
Yeah.
And so I understand that we're all kind of seeing another side as a threat to almost our existence, right? Or at least our way of seeing the world and a way we believe a healthy world will look like, But we just got to figure out how to show that grace and how to still advocate for others.
Yeah.
In
And
that.
I think for sure, the whoever's listening, it's probably immediately you're thinking, how can you justify this?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the hope right now, and what I want to just label right now is like, we're not talking to a specific side right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to everybody.
Sure.
And the
Mhm.
call isn't for the left only or for the right only. What we are doing is calling all of us to this higher standard of not looking at the other person just as your enemy. Like
Right.
because as soon as
Well,
I
it's to
hear
look
that,
at them as more than that.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
And bro, what I would add is like, this is like a concern that most places in the world have. Specifically, these ideas come from being American, right?
Mhm.
Of like, there's two options
Right.
of how to identify with stuff. But then if you go to like, so I've been to East Africa, right? The perspective isn't, are you Democrat or are you Republican? Like those two ideas don't exist there in that
Mhm.
way, right? And I'm not saying they don't have politics, but that politics is informed by the local place that you live in, right?
Mhm.
And that's why it looks different in California than the way it looks in some of our other campuses. But to think also, and politics look really different across the globe,
Right.
right? Which is why I think the ask of Jesus is to never identify loudest
Yeah.
Mm.
with your local politic, right?
Yeah.
But he's saying the loudest thing about you should be that your citizenship is in heaven, right? And that's the
so good.
text. Like the passage is about you're a citizen of heaven
Mm.
and you seek to inform the rest of the world, not just one political party, right? So
Mhm.
it's not how do you be a citizen of heaven inside of one of these, but rather how does a citizen of heaven treat
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of these other expressions, right?
I just maybe a phrase to summarize, like, a lot of what you've been saying and what we're getting at is like the work of Jesus shatters the false binary. You know what I mean?
Can you share more about?
Yeah. So you're saying that like, you go to a lot of these different places and the binary doesn't exist. And the reality is the systems that we're a part of truly affect the way we think. And here in this country, we have the ultimate binary, like blue and red, right? You turn on the
Right.
TV right now and you see numbers, like literally there's two teams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so what that does, it affects the way that we see the world as either this or that, right? And it forces us it makes us almost like treat people almost put
As being blue or red, right?
yeah, as like, oh, you're blue, you're red. Like sometimes even like when we meet people, we're trying to like
Classify.
Right,
What
are you
spectrum
red
Where do you
of
or are
blue
you
are
blue?
they, right? Or
Right.
what spectrum of red
Yeah.
are they?
where the reality is like we're a lot more dynamic of beings than that, right?
Yeah.
We're a lot more diverse than that. And so you see God entering into this atmosphere here where you have the Jews, right, who still hold on to this thing, and you have the Roman Empire, and those two ideas are constantly clashing. I'm sure there was a lot more, right? But when I see scripture, those two main ideas kind of pop up, and then Jesus comes in, and the Jews are straight up like, well, maybe the Romans.
They're like, it's time for insurrection.
Right, like Superman is here. Let's like, right? Zealots and stuff are like, the Messiah who we're waiting for is gonna be on our side, right? Roman Empire might not even acknowledge that, but Jesus comes in and doesn't say, all right, I'm gonna like, let's raise an army right now, or doesn't go to the Roman Empire and says, let's grow our kingdom here, but he literally shatters the binary and says the kingdom of God is at hand, right? There's this kingdom, and I will speak to the different powers at play, and I will speak loudly and against them, right, and call them out, which was really challenging for people. But ultimately, it's the kingdom of God that I'm looking for, the third way. And I don't want us to ever just be so stuck in this false binary that we can't think outside of. Because I found myself just now like struggling to think outside of.
I'm having trouble
right and
talking
wrong.
about it. Right, of like, how do I express this in a way that doesn't fully create a bias in the conversation, right? And I feel like acknowledging that is probably the first step to realizing that something's wrong, right? Because we don't know how to speak about our ideas without creating this idea that there is an enemy to this idea that exists out there, and I can put a face to who that person is, right? Like that's part of the problem, right?
Right. Absolutely. So maybe something that I'll be thinking about after this conversation a lot is areas in my life where this idea of a binary comes into play. Like, what are areas in my life where we have been tricked into believing that all there is this or that? Is this false binary?
Right.
And
that's great.
I'm going to try to acknowledge what those things are and then think about then the kingdom of God.
Dude.
Which represents the third way, right? The third way. The main way is the kingdom of God. So
we're calling this episode the third wave.
No.
The third way.
Are you saying way or wave?
Way. I said wave, but I meant way.
I heard you say wave once, and I kind of liked it. I was like, the third wave.
Okay.
You know, of like
the third wave.
The third wave.
Yeah.
That's ultramodern, bro. That's what it is. Like we're consistently trying to find the path of Jesus, as opposed to the binaries that we're always given, right and wrong. This is the way. When Jesus shatters that consistently throughout Scripture.
Jesus is consistently the new in situations, right? So there's always an established thing, and then Jesus shows up and is like a new way, right? A new path, a new way of thinking, a new way of acting, right? A new way of being.
I love it.
I feel like that's gonna. I think that's where we want. I think we should end there.
Yeah.
That's great with that idea. And for you guys listening on the podcast and on YouTube, what I want you to know is that there is a third wave for your life. That Jesus is calling you to more. And if you're feeling a stirring, if you're feeling something shifting within you, we encourage you to follow through, to press into that, because right now more than ever, Jesus is calling up his people to follow through with that third wave. So, hey, thank you guys so much for listening. Catch us again next week. We're going to have a special guest. Already got that planned out. And we'll see who wins the presidency. Also, at this point, we have no idea. Don't forget to buy toilet paper.
But lean into the third wave. That's
lean
where
into
it's
the third wave. Love you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out.
Peace.